So it's super dangerous. Again, I'm white, I'm neutral, I got a phone. So when I would get word that it's starting to the whispers a lot, I would like strategically put my knife next to me over here, a big knife. And then they would come and they'd be like, hey, Ouellette, you got a lighter? Just randomly, do you got a lighter? But I already know what they're doing. They want to see, so they could go tell their friend like, oh, he's on the phone or something like that. So I'd be like, yeah, come in. I'd hide the phone and I'd be like, oh, come back here. And I'd be like, it's in the corner in the back of my bed right here. So then they would come back and they would grab it from right here, but they would see the knife because I would act like I'm hiding the knife. But really, I want them to see it. I'm scared out of my mind, but I had to do like this. So then they would go back to their homeboys. And because I got a little mole in their group, they'd be like, bro, what's up, man? He said you had a big knife out.
Welcome back to the Locked In with Ian Bick podcast. On today's episode, I have Claude Ouellette here today to share his experience on how he survived a Florida state maximum security prison. I had the pleasure of sitting down with Claude and hearing his fascinating story when I was at the National Association for Reentry Professionals annual conference this past April, last month. I got to interview him at the hotel. He has a huge social media following, especially on TikTok, which is how I first met Claude. And I really think you guys are going to be into and excited about his story today. I also want to announce the first ever Locked In official giveaway. We're going to be giving away some Gatsby chocolate bars, some Magic Mind energy shots, some signed Chevy Chase merchandise, a Chevy Chase poster, and a Chevy Chase jersey, officially signed by the man himself. We're also giving away brand new Apple AirPods and a $100 Amazon gift card. And to top it all off, I'm throwing in one of the original mic boxes, these puppies right here, from Locked In with Ian Bick, the first ever mic boxes we had on the show with my signature on it. To enter, follow the directions that are on screen, or if you're listening to this on Apple or Spotify, all you have to do is make sure you're following me on Instagram at Ian_Bick and leave us a review on Apple or Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Email the screenshot that you're following me on Instagram and the screenshot of your review to giveaway@ianbick.com. That's giveaway@ianbick.com. I'm so excited to announce the winner for the giveaway in a couple of weeks. We will be picking someone at random from the email list. And because you guys support the show so much, and we want to thank you for all the support and love and the awareness you spread about the show, we're going to be doing giveaways like this much, much more often. Now, without further ado, sit back, relax, and get ready to lock in with Claude Ouellette. Ouellette, welcome, man. This is a year in the making, Locked In. It's a pleasure having you. We met last year at the NARP conference in Pensacola, and now here we are at the NARP conference in Nashville, Tennessee.
Yes, sir. I'm grateful to be here. You are doing phenomenal, and I'm grateful for the opportunity. And when you said, hey, I'll have you on the podcast, I actually booked another night just to be here. So salute you and appreciate it.
Thank you. And I heard you killed it during your presentation. You know, when Jimmy McGill says you did a great job, you must have blew it out of the park to get that man's attention.
Can we get that? Can you repeat that? Is there a loop?
No. And anyone who doesn't know who Jimmy McGill is, I had him on my podcast back in September. So definitely check out that Jimmy McGill episode. But yeah, I pretty much had all you guys that were at that conference. I had Danny Collins. He was a good episode. I had Jimmy. I had you.
Nice.
Who else was there with us?
I don't know, but if I could just piggyback on what you said, Jimmy McGill is the best speaker. You know, he's a great storyteller as well as has so many accolades to back up everything. So he's so much more than a showman. He putting in the work, and for him to, you know, because he was in there and he stood up and gave me a standing ovation. So I'm super grateful for that.
Well, you came prepared. I mean, we saw your booklet and you're on point. It looks like you put energy and passion into that, and that goes a long way in these types of things.
Yeah, but it's still scary though.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Or maybe it's not.
No,
yeah.
I still get nervous when I talk. You know,
Okay.
You get those jitters. I've learned the trick for me is you just talk to people before. Like you work the room a little bit, meet people, talk, and that kind of settles the nerves.
Oh, that's great advice. You were funny, by the way. You're a funny dude. You don't really see it all the time. Like I watch your stuff but your personality is really out there. It's awesome to watch you speak as well.
Well, you have the same thing too. I mean, you have a huge TikTok following. You have almost 500,000 followers. Are you on other platforms too?
No.
Oh, well, you got to get on that, my friend.
I do. And really watching y'all, it's so inspirational. I've watched you catapult, and it really shows, like, because you are vision oriented to my knowledge, right? You might stumble through things, but you seem driven and you seem focused. Even when you said you were in prison, you like took down a notebook and you wrote down what you wanted to accomplish. And it just shows the power of focus. So yes, we are in the process of building, as we have kind of narrowed the scope on what we want to accomplish. It's easier to then say, okay, well, this is what we want to accomplish. Let's branch out now.
Definitely. Well, we'll plug your links to your social media pages in the description. Our listeners always like to connect with guests, especially the energetic ones that have big personalities.
Okay.
And you got the glasses and whatnot. So, you kind of fit that part. They're like orange and tinted a little bit, huh?
Not a chomo. No.
Yeah, you're not a chomo. I've actually been getting some hate emails from people that they find the word chomo offensive, and I tell it in an entertaining way because I was labeled as a chomo, and I know not all sex offenders are physically a chomo, a child molester, but in federal prison they're all categorized as that.
So if speaking frankly right here, one of our fundamentals with our organization is social support and mutual aid. One person helping another makes both people stronger. And at the end of the day, regardless, nobody should endorse hate in any capacity. Like, it's not a healthy road to go down regardless. But I can imagine that people probably jump on anything to be like, oh, I don't like you now because you said the wrong thing.
Yeah, because there are some content creators that do put out like that hate towards certain classes of individuals. But I just want people to know that I don't necessarily do it in a negative way. It's just I'm making light of my situation and my experience because I was labeled one in federal prison.
But it's also a real thing. So the reality of it. Right. So when I was in prison, I've evolved as an individual. But when I was in prison, you wouldn't speak to a child molester. There would, in any capacity, there's no reason for us to have a dialogue. And so there are people who extort child molesters, which, they might interact. But for me, as somebody who is neutral and definitely didn't want to be associated because, birds of a feather flock together. So,
yeah,
I mean, it's real. So those prison TikTokers that kind of direct content towards that, there's a lot of reality in the fact that they are, extorted, beat up, isolated, blah, blah, blah.
Absolutely. So is Ouellette's not your actual name, right?
Claude Ouellette.
Claude Ouellette's your last name?
Yes, sir.
Interesting. Where does that come from?
French-Canadian.
French-Canadian.
So my grandfather came to the United States at 12 years old, couldn't speak English.
Okay.
Yes, sir. I interviewed him recently because it's really fascinating. They're from Quebec. And so when they came here, he was 12 years old, couldn't speak English, and he stayed in the 4th grade, or he stayed in the 7th grade for 4 years before he quit school. And he ended up becoming uber successful. But yeah.
Now, were you born in the United States?
I was. So my father was the first one born in the United States. I was born in Florida.
Okay, where in Florida?
Sanford.
Stanford?
Sanford. Yes, sir.
What was that like?
So I really, the day that I was born, I remember coming into the world, I looked up and I was like, all you common people, no, I have no idea what it was like being born there. However, I know the story of being born and living in Florida through my parents, and they love Florida, and they actually still live in Florida. They're divorced, and there was a huge story between then and where they're at right now. But Florida's an amazing place. Have you been there? You're from up in no
I'm from
man's.
Connecticut. Yeah, we visited, growing up, and Miami, and then I was in Pensacola where I met you. I've been to Key West. I like Florida. It's a good
Yeah.
state. I could see myself living there.
For sure.
How was your childhood though? Did you have siblings? Do you guys grow up poor, rich, middle class?
Okay, but this is pretty wild. And in my presentation, I spoke about this. So I have a big sister who is the director over her department in Dubai, been there 8 years, traveled the world. She has a master's in social work and a minor in education. She's dedicated her life to helping people, which is pretty incredible. She was raised by my mom and dad. So she was artificially inseminated, but she was raised by my father too. And she was raised by them before they did drugs. And then about when she was 9, and she's 6 years older than me, so I was young, I was 3, 4, 5 years old, they started to get on crack cocaine. And my dad had a sexual relation with a woman, had a child, but he didn't, it was like a one night stand thing. So that child wasn't in the house. Her name's Heather. I love her to death. I tracked her down when I was in prison. And the relevance to this is my sister moved out when they got on drugs. So my sister was like 13, 14 years old. She moved out of the house. I was raised by 2 parents that were addicted to crack cocaine, couldn't pay bills, running from the law. My sister went to college. I went to prison. And my other sister, Heather, was neglected. My father stopped sending for her, and super unfortunate. So that's kind of like a brief thing. If you want me to expound, I could probably expound. But my parents divorced when I was 10 years old. I had to go live with my aunt. A lot of stuff like that.
When you look back on it now, do you think that had an effect on the path you would travel down?
Yeah, I think it's really relevant. So one of the things that we always say is people only do what they know until they learn something new. And I believe that because, again, I was raised by the same parents as my sister, and my sister went to college, I went to prison. And we both dedicated our lives to helping people. So I think like that, the core of who my parents were kind of hit me and my sister, but our environment put us in 2 different trajectories.
No, if we had one of your friends from those early days here, what would they say about you if we asked them? How would they describe you?
So I feel like everybody always kind of described me as funny, and I was cool to hang out with. I just made really bad decisions. So I don't feel that I knew how to be productive in a positive way. So I only did people only do what they know until they learn something new. So my toolbox was filled with domestic violence, unstable temperaments, drugs, and what was going on around me, breaking and entering and all that. So I was a good-hearted person that loved to laugh, that only knew how to pull from things that were destructive.
Do you recall like a specific moment where it kind of you were in a gray area and you went into a dark area? Maybe it was like a crime you committed or a drug you used. What was like the turning point?
I didn't like school, so my big turning point, I quit school at 12 years old.
Really?
Yeah, 12.
That's before high school, like 8th grade?
7th grade was the last grade I completed. So do we have water at all? No.
Assistant, we need some water.
Man, so at 12 years old, I quit school, and I never even thought of this, but I think the fact that my mom, nobody told me I couldn't quit school, that was a huge turning point.
Isn't that incredible when you think about that and you say those words? Like it's like a domino effect, like that one moment. Like what if you stayed in school, how different your life would be now?
I think school was the last tinge of structure that I had in my life. And when I made the decision to be like, I'm not gonna go to school, and nobody said don't not go. And then I just started doing whatever I wanted. And again, I had no idea what productivity was in a positive way.
So did you ever get your high school diploma or degree or anything?
I ended up getting a GED way later on in prison. Like I think I was like 20 years old and I got my GED.
Okay, so 12th grade, you quit school.
12 years old.
12 years old, sorry, you quit. What do you do? Where are you living? What's life look like?
So my mom was dating this guy, and my mom was a bad drug addict at this time. So when I say bad drug addict, by the way, I love my mom, and I would not want to paint her in some horrible picture, but I'm going to give you this just kind of as a reference point of where my life was. I remember one of my best friends was like 5 years older than me. I'm 12 years old, and my mom came in there and was like, I want some crack. And she looked at my friend, and I knew my friend could get some, so he looked at me, and I was like, when I'm grown, I don't want nobody telling me what to do. And he went and got my mom that, came back. My mom was in her room, and I was about to, so I was driving my mom's car at this time already. So I went back to my mom's room, and that was the first time that I seen her smoking. And I grabbed her keys, and I left, and I ended up coming back home about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I pulled up in front of the trailer. All the lights are on, the front door's open, and I go in the house, blankets and stuff, like everything's flipped over, ashtray, and I started freaking out, and I didn't know what to do. And I called my dad, who had already kicked me out at this time. And I was like, Mom, smoke crack, what do I do? And he's like, don't panic, just, relax. He kind of calmed me down. And then the next day, my dad threatened to call like DCF. He called my sister. My sister was at college at the time. My sister drove from out of town. He threatened to put my mom in jail. So like my life was like that kind of like set me, like that's where my life was right there.
Did you get into selling drugs too, or you were just using?
Not until I went to prison. I wasn't using. So when I say I was around drugs, like I would come home and there would be drugs sitting around. I remember I threw my mom's drug pipe in a ditch in the backyard when it was raining, and she came home and freaked out and made me climb into the ditch while it was raining, like I'm gonna find it. This kind of, honestly, it's not even good to talk about my mom like this, because it's like painting her. You can't, and it's not even editing it. It's just not a good picture. Mm-hmm. So that was a bad situation.
And what was your mentality though to even know that that was bad? Like where did you learn drugs were bad, this has a bad effect, and you wanted to throw it out and not use that at all?
Because my mom was different. So this is what's crazy. Again, my parents weren't always drug addicts. Mm-hmm. So I probably unconsciously seen the transformation without really realizing it. So my sister was raised with parents without drugs. I was raised with them, so I probably seen it. And I did vividly remember hearing my mom cry all the time. Obviously, my parents went through a divorce too. So then that was something that was different. And my brain was probably connecting these two unconsciously. And I remember my mom always being sad, always crying. And I also remember my mom loving me, being super creative, taking me, going to my baseball games. So I watched a transformation, even though my brain couldn't register it. Now that you're asking this question, it's pretty distinctive that like that's what happened.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, reflecting back on our childhoods and how it impacts us at an early age. And a lot of the times in these stories that we share on our platform, there was things in our childhood that clearly affected and defined the path that we would choose.
Yeah, because after that, it was a free fall. My sister came from out of town, and she told me that I had to go live with my dad. And at this time, I was fighting with my father because he had already kicked me out. So I ran away, and my mom and my sister stayed in Macon, Georgia, and looked for me for a week. Now, my sister's in college in Winthrop University. And when they found me, like a week later, my sister's like, you got to go somewhere. And my mom was crying, saying, I can't afford for you to live here. And I ended up going and living with my sister in an all-girls college dorm at Winthrop University. I think I was probably about, 14 at this time.
All-girls college.
Yeah.
How does
in
that
the dorm?
Don't you stick
she
out?
Had to sneak me in, bro. I remember going to the colleges and the dances, and the girls would be like, "How old are you?" It'd be dark. I'd be like 21. What I'm saying? But we went to, my sister's a Delta too, honestly. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, that's kind of unique. It's like I don't know if it's all black, but it's all black. Mm-hmm. So that was the environment that I was in. It was kind of just But my sister is respectful and stuff like that. She didn't put me in no weird situation, but it's still wild for me as a 14-year-old, her sister, sorority sisters and college students, and I'm 14 years old.
How'd you support yourself? Did you have a job at all?
No, so at four, so this is what ended up happening. I was probably about 14 years old. I think I was exactly, if I'm to have to narrow it down. We ended up going back to my dad's. So I lived with my sister there for like 3 months. And then it was closer towards Christmas. And we went and visited my father, and he gave her enough money to get an apartment, to get an apartment. And my grandfather, so my grandfather's successful now, my grandfather offered to pay my rent, as long as my portion of the rent, as long as I went to school. So that happened for about 3 months, but I was too far gone. And this is unfortunate. I was too far gone. And within 3 months, I was already, because I went to an alternative school, because I was like 3-4 years behind at this time. And they were trying to put me in an alternative school, not for behavior, but to kind of skip grades. And it didn't work. I ended up like quitting that school, like running away from the school. And then my sister said, I can't have you live here anymore. And I ended up going to my mom's house, and she was living in Alabama. Now my mom was bad on drugs, and she ended up getting a trailer. And when we went to Alabama, my sister drove me down there. The very first night, this again, I hate painting my mom like this. The very first night, my mom got drunk and there was some change, and she said she had to pay her electricity bill. And it ended up being a chaotic night, like a bad night. And I told my sister, and this is kind of like the first, I was like, I don't want to live here. I can't live here. Take me to dad's. Even though I was like so mad at my dad, but going back to my mom's for that one night, it was just like, I can't go back to that. Like I had forgot how that life was for that like 9 months that I was away from my mom's.
Yeah.
And I ended up going to my dad's, where I ended up getting in trouble and finding myself in prison.
So what happens when you were with your dad that led to getting into trouble with the law?
Too far gone, and nobody was able to reach me. So part of my whole thing is like, why couldn't people reach me? Like fast forwarding, I was in prison. I was like, why couldn't nobody reach me? And my dad would always say, I can't do nothing with them. Like he kicked me out. He tried to send me, told the judge to keep me in juvenile, even though I don't feel like I was that bad. I don't know. It's hard for me to say. I'm an adult now, and I'm sure that I was a defiant kid. But when I went to Florida, I fought with my dad's wife, and he ended up putting me in a camper outside, and it just kind of compounded. Like my criminal life was horrible. It's disgusting to even talk about. So it's not like robbing old people or anything sexual. It's just I was super bad, terrorizing the neighborhood, and I feel like rap music. I was living what I was listening to, and I was carrying a gun, and I ended up, breaking into people's stuff, and I caught an aggravated assault with a firearm. I got into this altercation, and I got jumped by 3 dudes, and I went and got a gun and came back and shot up the house, and they were on the front porch, and I ended up getting booked.
How did you get caught for that? They knew who you were, or the police
Yeah, so
found you?
they jumped me. 3 people jumped me. I was walking down the road. This is what I went. I went to jail many times as a juvenile, but this caught me a minimum mandatory of 15 years. I was walking down the road. I got jumped by 3 dudes. Whenever I got jumped by 3 dudes, there was a guy standing there. He was about to call the cops. And when he was about to call the cops, I knocked the phone out of his hand and said, "Don't call the cops." And I ended up going to my house, grabbing a gun. And I started, because I was in the camper, my dad was like, "Go fight him like a man. Go fight him." And I was like, "They ain't fighting fair. I ain't fighting fair." And I started walking down the driveway with the gun, and my girlfriend at the time, she pulled up next to me and told me to get in. And it was actually her sister's baby's daddy. And she took me, and I came up with this idiotic plan to drop me off here, and I'm gonna cut through the woods. It sounds so stupid. I'm gonna cut through the woods, and I'm gonna go into their house, and I'm gonna murder everybody. And they were sitting on the front porch. So when I came out, I panicked, they panicked, and I just started shooting, and I didn't stop until the clip was empty.
Wow. And how old were you when this happened?
17 years old.
Did anyone get hurt in the shooting?
No, one of them wrote a statement and said the bullet grazed their head.
Okay. How did that make you feel when you saw the statement?
They jumped me. So, I mean, I don't know what I'm supposed to say politically, but I was like, they jumped me and I retaliated. So I couldn't believe that they wrote the statement, you know, but it didn't matter. I was when I seen myself on the news in the county jail, I thought my life was over.
Were they in like a gang or something, or were they getting into trouble themselves that they?
Yeah,
they
so
would
just a
jump
bunch
you?
of white poverty. Now I had already been in trouble prior to this. You know, I got arrested and went to a adult prison at 16 years old. So I was already a troublemaker, and then I was out. I had got released out of adult prison at 17 and was booked right back in with less than 90 days.
Do you think you were doing this because you were lashing out because you wanted someone to help you?
So, not to repeat that. So what I truly believe is that I had no idea of a better life. So prior to this, you know, when I was growing up, there wasn't social media. You might have seen like, you know, MTV Cribs, but other than that, I'm growing up in poverty. Nobody around me has any money. Nobody knows anything. Like, I quit school already. I had no idea what was a life? Like, what was life supposed to look like? To repeat, people only do what they know until they learn something new. I was doing what was normal. And one of my biggest things right now is to let people know what their true potential is. Because I don't feel like when I went to prison, I'm like, man, what is around me? Like I'm decent, you know, like you belong here, you know, but they're probably doing the same thing too. They probably don't know any better. They probably weren't given many options, but from an outside perspective, throw it common sense, you know, right from wrong, you know, and because there's like this vague, you know, right from wrong, you're like, well, maybe I did know right from wrong. But the reality is, man, that's kind of hard to say that you know, you just know there's a consequence there, but is it really right from wrong?
So you just needed someone to show you the light, like show you a different side to the life you were living, and you might have been able to avoid everything you would go through.
I think I had a lot of potential.
I mean, you still have a lot of potential.
I mean, but I lost a lot of years, bro. I went through a lot of pain. You're talking to somebody that's been through it. Like I'm not, so I'm smiling, boy. I'm filled with pain. Like I'm fucked up.
And that's real.
There's no question, no theatrics. I'm passionate about it. I don't even like talking about that past because that isn't what I would want to even be on a podcast. My future, my life, my change is what's important. I don't glorify, nor, you know, I hate that I spoke negatively about my mom. But if the truth is like, that's what it is, and probably part of it, then that's important. For the beginning part of this podcast, the takeaway should be, people only do what they know until they learn something new. So your kids thinking that they know something and you haven't showed it to them, you need to tell them what their full potential could bring them. Show it to them. Dig it. Sometimes they say, oh, well, I told them one time. What, like we don't even, as adults, we need to have things embedded in us. So just because you told a child that, they need to know it. They need to see it. They need to believe it. You know, as you think, so you are. So those kids need to know that.
Yeah, and I think it's so important for people to share where they came from. So parents listening, or when individuals that don't have kids yet do have kids, they can look out for these signs and they can know how their child may be feeling, because that's how you create change. And
this, I'm going to tell you this, and we could move past this, but my parents will justify, and this kind of makes me hold a little anger. My parents will justify because my parents love me. So because they love me so much, I know my mom loves me. My mom has broke the law countless times. I won't even talk about it on this podcast, anywhere. I know my mom loves me. So because she loved me so, she will be like, I loved you. Love's not enough.
Yeah. I mean, we see that in abusive relationships. People stay because the person told them they love them Does that make it right? Does that make it acceptable? No. We use the word love very loosely in society, and we make it think that it's okay to do bad things or to harm another because the word love's involved, and it's not. And when you see someone like you who has been through something traumatic and has the hurt, love isn't enough to get you to the other side of that. Love didn't get you through prison. You got yourself through prison on your own, figuring it out your own way in some of your pivotal years. I mean, so you get sentenced to 15 years at 17. What does that look like? How much do you have to serve on 15 years?
So I was sentenced to 15 years minimum mandatory in the state of Florida. No chance for early release. And I remember walking back into the quad and they're like, damn, boy, I couldn't have did that. So now my grandfather stepped up and got a lawyer. So, and I think an important part of that is I got a downward departure in order to receive the 15 years minimum mandatory. So they wanted to give me 180 years. Then they came to a plea bargain for 20 years minimum mandatory. And then trial was 6 days away. My cellmate, matter of fact, my cellmate told him where the gun was.
You did not tell
Swear to God, bro.
You told your cellmate?
Not happy about that.
Bro, this is a jailhouse snitch story? You got to tell us the story. We've never had one of these on here before.
No way. So
no way. Yeah,
true story. I could pull the paperwork. I'll email you the paperwork.
Well, tell us from like start to finish with your first conversation.
So
with
I don't
him
even, okay.
Yeah, and what exactly happened?
So I don't really even remember where it started. So we were roommates. I'm going to trial. My grandfather steps up out of the blue. He hires in a lawyer. I feel like a boss, going out there. I got a lawyer, I'm like, I'm gonna beat this, And so I was trying to think of my lawyer's name. It was James Baxley and it is a team lawyer too. Anyways, that's irrelevant. You can take that out. So I'm visiting with my lawyer and I'm telling my roommate. So whenever this crime was committed, so my victims who were also kind of assailants, they shot back at me and they chased me too. They went in the house, grabbed a gun, and like it was all going down. Now, mind you, I got blood on me because I was just jumped by these three dudes. So I'm running through the woods. And when I'm running through the woods, there's people on a porch. I jump down in this like meadow area. I bury the gun. When I bury the gun, I jump up and I'm like, they're shooting at me. They're shooting at me. I have blood all over me. My girlfriend, my genius plan, her to drop me off and then come back. I jump in the car. And so anyways, I buried the gun right there. I'm in the county jail. I'm telling my roommate, just nonchalantly, we've been in there for a couple months. I'm young, bro. I'm young in adult jail, so I'm like, I'm gonna beat this case. I got these big boy lawyers. And 6 days before trial, they have an emergency hearing. My roommate, so how he knew my roommate was getting out on probation, I said, hey, bro, go get the gun. This is where the gun is, because they were putting metal detectors down. They were searching for the gun. There was no gun in the crime. My lawyers went and took pictures to make it look like the angle that the shots were, that they were shooting at me, so that I was running from them and they were shooting and they kind of shot into their own house because they've already, I was beat up. I was, all that. So we had this grand plan, honestly. And we have big boy attorneys. So I tell my roommate, get the gun and then just, throw it away, whatever, and I'll have somebody give you some money. So my roommate gets out. I think he gets pulled over is what the story is. I don't really know the exact story, but he went to violate his probation 2 days after he got out. Instead, he told him where the gun was. I know this because 6 days before trial, I have an emergency hearing. I go to sit down. His name's Kyle Holcomb. I'm the founder and CEO of the organization, but Kyle Holcomb, I'll never forget you. So my lawyer sits down and he says, what do you know about a Kyle Holcomb? I said, I don't know anything about a Kyle Holcomb. And the state stands up and says, Your Honor, I would like to produce the firearm that was allegedly used in the crime and 6 new witnesses. And they had the gun.
Holy cow.
Facts.
Would you have gotten the 15 if they didn't find the gun?
So I was going to trial. I wouldn't have signed anything.
Oh, you were going to trial.
I'm
You
going
hadn't
to
signed.
trial.
Okay.
1,000,000%. I was not taking a plea. When this happened, my dad came. When my dad came to visit me, I've never seen my dad cry. And my dad was like, you know, you need to take it. And I'm like, I can't take it. I can't do the time. Mentally, I can't do it. So I told him that. And my dad was like, just take the deal. And I was like, if I take the deal, I need you to visit. I need you to come see me. I need help. And he said, if I got it, you got it. That's what he told me. Now, mind you, the first time I got in trouble, he said, if you ever get in trouble again, I'll never be there. So I told him, just let me go to trial and life will be what it is. I was ready to take it. You know, I wasn't ready, but that was my stance.
Man, I'm sick for you right now. Holy cow.
Facts. And
Just that one conversation got you jammed up.
Yeah. So my lawyer came in and he presented, so they were offering 20. We were taking it to trial. They had new evidence. My lawyer came in, said they're offering you 15 years minimum mandatory. You should take it. I denied it. He came back with a 3-page letter, and I can send you that letter. I don't know if you can put things in your links. A 3-page letter saying, as his attorney, I am doing deliberately what he doesn't say do, that he doesn't feel like he could beat it in trial with the new evidence, that the judge can easily sentence me to 180 years consecutive, and that the judge is not given to fits of temper or some nonsense, like, bro, scared the crap out of me. And he called my dad and was like, he needs to sign it. So then that conversation ensued, and I ended up signing it.
Now, out of the 15, do you do the entire 15?
15 years minimum mandatory in the state of Florida.
So you went in at 17 and got out at 32 about?
I went in at 18 because I told you they didn't start the time until I was sentenced.
Oh, really? They don't count you for holding?
They can, but I caught new charges in that time, like old charges. Mm-hmm. So they started it from the second booking.
And how old are you now, to put it in perspective?
I am 38 years old.
So you've been out about 6 years?
I've been out 5 years.
5 years, okay. And are you still on probation or
No,
something?
I'm not.
Okay, good. So that 15
18
years,
to 33.
On that 15 years, is there parole or supervised release afterwards, or it's just a clean 15 year done?
So that's it. 15 years minimum mandatory. And then what ended up happening is I walked back into the cell, to your original question. When I got sentenced, I walked back into the cell and the dude was like, man, there ain't no way I could sign that. So I said, well, I don't know if I can do 15 years, but I know I can't do life. And and my ass went to prison.
Where did they send you first?
They were like a reception. Florida sends you to a reception center.
Okay. What is it called? Oh, you were older, so that you didn't go to like a JIT camp. I've heard guys talk about that.
No, I didn't go to a JIT camp. I went to a JIT camp the first time I went to prison.
Okay. So they send you to what level security?
So I went to, it's called a reception center. And from the reception center, I went to a prison called Hamilton CI, which is a adult prison that has a juvenile dorm in the adult prison. So I went to Hamilton. I went to the youth offender dorm because I was under 21. I think you can stay there till you're 24. And within 6 months, I caught an inciting a riot charge.
For what?
We barricaded the doors on the police, and it's unfortunate, but assaulted the cop, and we all got emergency shipped. So I went in like kind of like distraught, you know, obviously. And just life wasn't like, I remember when I first got there, they handed me a shovel and told me to dig a trench. And I threw the shovel and I said, I ain't digging a trench.
Real life holes.
Yeah, like dig a trench. Yeah, we had to, bro, in Florida, you got to sweep the sun off the sidewalk. Really? Those are facts. Yeah.
Did you see the movie Holes?
No, I didn't.
Oh, you got to watch that. It's a good Disney Channel movie.
Okay. So in Florida, they'll be like, here, grab that broom, sweep the sun off the sidewalk. Mm-hmm. Or stand right here, look over there, and if you see a tornado, you holler, tornado.
And you were probably paid $0 for that.
Oh, you're paid nothing in the state of Florida.
Texas is like that too. You don't get anything.
It's an oppressive state.
Wow.
Super oppressive.
Okay, so you do that and then they send you to a different security prison.
Well, we barricaded the doors, caught an inciting a riot charge. We all got beat up. 8 of us got emergency transferred, and we went to a lockdown prison called Charlotte CI.
And you're not even 21 years old at this point.
No, hell no.
How are they treating you in these prisons? Like, me and you went to prison almost at the same age, and my experience, as you know, is very different than a lot of other people's experience because of the way I handled myself and moved around. But how did you move around and handle yourself?
So, I mean, I was white in the Florida Department of Corrections. So the way and white people are a minority in Florida, and I hate to speak in general terms, but a lot of white people are racist, and it's probably because they're minority and they're targeted and stuff like that. So it's rough if you choose to be neutral. So what people would do is, say in the JIT dorm, one dude would tell his homeboy, hey bro, I'm gonna put all my stuff in your locker. They lock the locker, they go to chow. When they come back, the dude's gonna say, oh, all my stuff's missing. They plan this. And then they're gonna say, we're gonna go locker to locker. And if you don't like it, open up that locker. And if you don't like it, get in the corner, right? Grid. You gotta go to like a little place where the police can't see you fight. And really, they just wanna see who's the weakest. Who's gonna not open up their box, or who's gonna open up their box? Because if you open up your box to let them search your box for his stuff that he knows where it's at, then they got potential to put down.
And did you ever find yourself in those positions?
Hell yeah.
And how does that go down for you?
You fight.
And what if you don't?
I never not fought.
So you were just like, you went in there with this mentality that you had to fight?
I was always more scared to lose like my dignity than I was to lose a fight. So that's what I was more fearful of, becoming like a chump, like a bitch, like where I was going to be extorted. And that made me just strong enough to stand up for myself.
So Ouellette, you're a young kid sentenced to a very lengthy prison term. Are there counselors, case managers that are trying to walk you through it, help you? Any assistance?
No, I don't recollect one time ever anybody being caring in any capacity.
And I'm sure you saw people with your age with that amount of time that, had struggled with mental health going into that. I couldn't imagine getting 15 years at that age.
Well, I caught an inciting a riot charge. So mind you, I'm probably like, I might be 19 years old, and I'm in 24-hour lockdown right now in Charlotte CI. And, it's horrible. You're losing your mind in there. I'm in 24-hour lockdown, just gone.
And rec is in the cell, like would they have an attached cell or anything?
So rec in the Florida Department of Correction, when you're in 24-hour lockdown, it's like small cages, and you'll go 3 times a week for an hour. So, and they'll put 2 people in a cage. So it's like a tiny little, it's a cell cage. Mm-hmm. So it's the same size as your cell almost. And there's a pull-up bar and a dip bar, and you talk to people through the fence.
And showers were in the cell, or?
No showers they handcuff you, take you to the shower, uncuff you, and then 2 minutes later or a minute later, come knock on it, cuff up again, walk back to the cell, and you're in your room and you only shower 3 times a week. And there's no AC in the Florida Department of Corrections. It's 100 degrees in the cell. Oh, so I'm a teenager, 100 degrees in the cell, losing my mind. Just, again, I have nothing to think with. It's compounding the problem. I get out of lockdown. My parents are still on drugs. My sister's going through a divorce. And you just revert back to your instincts. How can I make $1? So you try to hustle. Hustling puts you in compromising positions, where you gotta, again, people try to put down on you and whatever you're gonna do, or try to get over on you. It might not even try to put down on you. They might owe you $5. And they'll be like, I ain't got it. And eventually you just have to either step up or you're going to write it off. But if you write it off, then that's going to be known.
Is there anything you did in prison that you had to do to survive that you, looking back on it now, wish you were never put in that position?
Not to survive. I mean, I don't really know what you mean. I hustled, which caused me a tremendous amount of problems, but I don't necessarily I did it willfully. I probably shouldn't have. So if I regret that, then maybe, but nothing that compromises my morals.
Okay, so you didn't get like recruited to a gang or have to run with any individuals? Or?
No, they tried. I ended up being a big hustler in prison, and I was neutral.
What do you mean by hustler?
So, I kind of got like bringing in like just trafficking dope, swallowing dope. Like I don't even know what's legal and what's not legal. Like I don't really. I just was a big hustler. I ended up, breaking the law. Hustling. I ran a store, not a store, but I ran a ticket, which led me to being able to put people in positions to run a store because I knew. So you also got to know where your strengths and your weaknesses are. So I brought value when I walked into a dorm because they know I had a cell phone. So I would also try to manipulate the situation to be like, like I remember one time there was this white dude and he had a lot of money and and the dorm was able to benefit off of him. So I also had a phone and I wanted to sell the white dude a phone. Now, everybody don't know that I could get phones or whatever. So I would so I had to hustle around gangs. So if I was selling X, Y, or Z and the gangs found out, and the gangs are selling something different, it's fine. But if they found out that I was selling this and I'm making money, then they're gonna switch into that lane. And I would have to adjust and switch to a different lane where they don't really know the money's at. And this was a cat and mouse game that I would have to play being neutral. So for example, this white dude, I made a bunch of money off of him and I wanted him to have access to a phone because then I know that he could get even more money. So what I would strategically do is I would go to the head of like the head of the gangs or the dorm, even though it's not like, this is the head, like, you know who's in power. And sometimes there might be like an arms guy, like the muscle, but you bypass him and you go to who you do know who has the power. And I would just be like, hey, can I come permission to speak freely? And he would be like, yeah. And I would be like, listen, man, like this dude's got money. If you let these dudes come in and rob this dude, you're gonna run money off out of the dorm. So you should make your dorm like where it can flourish. Like this could be a powerhouse dorm, but it can't be a powerhouse dorm if outsiders are able to come in here and try to mini extort or intimidate people with money. But strategically, I'm doing this because like even though like I'm exterior, like tough or, cause I would handle business if I had to, right? But I'm still scared. So I would tell him this and use that guy as a reference point because I'd be like, we could get him a phone. He could get access to his money. And the head would be like, yeah, that's a good idea, So then he would put out like word that nobody can come into the dorm and rob. So then now we got this guy with a phone, which alleviates pressure off of me because even though I was tough, people I would have to play politics. So they'd be like, hey, Ouellette, could I borrow your phone? Like other gang affiliates. So the thing is this, I never, it's a thin line and I don't know how I made it, but you gotta be tough and you also can't be stupid. You gotta understand the power that they have. So it's straddling that fence. And whenever somebody does try to toughen up on you and try to put down, so to speak, even if it's like softly, like I remember there was this dude that was like, hey bro, like I can help you, like I got you. And this dude just got here, but he was pretty powerful. But I was like, I don't need no help. I said respectfully, I didn't ask for any help. And he just kind of tried to press on me. And I was like, bro, I won't do anything. Like it don't matter. Like I didn't ask for no help. I don't need no help. And my best friend who was kind of close, he worked out with the head. So that kind of saved me. I had a friend that was really close to the head. And he called me, he's like, hey bro, what did you say to this dude? And I'm like, I didn't say shit. He tried to pull up on me on some dumb shit. And he's like, well, he told this dude that you got slick with him. And I was like, man, fuck him. Like I didn't do anything but stand up for myself. But he tried to get me put on the plate. And I'm not saying any names because I'm just kind of like, I don't really understand all this I don't even know what the legality is with stuff like that. But I'll tell you what, people don't know that shit is real. Like I've seen a phone call and the prison get shut down in 15 minutes. Like it's real. Like I don't know one thing I do notice is that a lot of people, and I know other people are been through hell, but I did all my time in maximum security prison. So I didn't transition to medium, minimum. And in the hustle world, it's a different animal. Going to prison and being like, well, I'm neutral too. I didn't gang bang. Well, you were neutral, but you read books, went to rec and went to school. You can be neutral in the state of Florida, but being neutral and making money and being neutral and moving, that's a different animal. You can get put on the plate super easy because as a neutron, there is no room for error, zero. There is none, because they're waiting for it. They want it. The underlings are always going to the heads and being like, hey, what's up? Why can't we green light Ouellette? Like, and I would get word like, hey, like I didn't green light to let them come in on you, but I did green light. They could come in on you one at a time, or one person could do something if he wanted to. And that's where you got to be tough enough to stand up. And I had to be strategic. So say I put the blanket over the door. So I already know that they're talking about robbing me all the time. For one, they don't know what I'm doing. So they don't know that I'm serving their top dog. So they're always trying to, it just looks like I'm going and copping and doing a little hustling, because I had to hustle a little bit, because if I played too stupid, people aren't stupid. Like I'm shaking and moving too much. I have too much, but I would just play like I'm doing little stuff to keep busy, like I'm just moving around. They have no idea what I'm really doing though. So they would always talk about like I'm gonna rob you, because I would tell their boss, I would be like, listen, do not tell anybody. If anybody finds out, done. Like I'm done. So I was like, you have to keep people looking at you. You have to. It's better that way. You don't want that, because then you lose that power of being miraculously able to produce. If you tell them, oh, I got Ouellette serving me and we're getting a deal, because you better believe I'm giving him a deal. So he's going to lose that power of the mysteriousness of being able to kind of miraculously produce stuff. So the underlings would just see me moving around. So anyways, I would always get word back that they was trying to rob me. Always. They'd be like, oh, they're talking about you, Ouellette. So what I would have to do is say I got my curtain up and I'm on my phone. And a lot of people don't have phones. We're talking back in the day when phones weren't flooded. So it's super dangerous. Again, I'm white, I'm neutral, I got a phone, I got illegal shit. So when I would get word that it's starting to the whispers a lot, I would like strategically put my knife next to me over here, a big ass knife. And then they would come and they'd be like, hey, Ouellette, you got a lighter? Just randomly, do you got a lighter? Like, bitch, I got my curtain up, but I already know what they're doing. They want to see, so they could go tell their friend like, oh, he's on the phone or something like that. So I'd be like, yeah, come in. I'd hide the phone and I'd be like, oh, come back here. And I'd be like, it's in the corner in the back of my bed right here. So then they would come back and they would grab it from right here, but they would see the knife, because I would act like I'm hiding the knife, but really I want them to see it. I'm scared out of my mind, but I had to do shit like this. So then they would go back to their homeboys, and because I got a little mole in their group, they'd be like, damn, bro, what's up, man? He said you had a big ass knife out. But all that shit's strategic. I'm trying to fucking survive too, because I'm not tough. I gotta be smart. I gotta maneuver a certain way.
Doesn't being neutral though cause some danger, because it's a numbers game in prison? You have all these gangs and groups of individuals, and there's less neutral people, right, than there are people running with other groups?
Bro, I don't know how I'm sitting I do not know how I survived. The fact that I'm here is a miracle. The fact that I'm here, but there's a lot that goes into it. I invested in people. I made myself so valuable. Not that I was untouchable, but I was respected, and I brought value. I made people's lives better. So it was a benefit to keep me around.
It's a relationship game. It's
It's
all
a-
political.
that's
it's
all it
politics.
is.
Yeah, it's
That's
politics
all-
101 is prison politics. That's all it is.
And again, I hate that my podcast is about this nonsense.
No, it's your life, man. This is your story, This is what you lived through this for 15 years, It's a big part of who you are.
Facts. I mean, I did it every day. I woke up and worked 10-hour days. I had to strategically, how are we going to get it from here? So like we started with small stuff like, and the thing is you got to be creative. So we would start with like, put stuff so I would get somebody on the street to put something in the spine of the book and, but you can't send the book in. So you'd have to send it through Barnes and Noble. So I'd be like, go buy it from Barnes and Noble, bring it home, bring it back into Barnes and Noble, rebuy it. It's the same exact book. And then bring it up there and say, I would like to send this to the prisoner.
I heard about guys doing this with Amazon.
They do it all there's so many things.
That's crazy.
But it's like, you just have to, so you have to orchestrate all day long and you lose 10 times, you win 1 time. It's almost like being an entrepreneur.
So what was a day-to-day look like for you?
It depends on different points. I did most of my life in prison. So I'll say this. So I was just naturally trying to survive, hustling, getting in trouble, but not too much trouble, but just day to day. I ended up catching an outside escape charge. I don't know.
An outside escape charge?
Yeah.
How?
So November 17, 2007, I was at South Bay Correctional Facility. I got caught with a cell phone. And I was in a riot, so the riot charge, and then I went to this prison and I was kind of hustling. I had a cell phone. We were dibbling and dabbling. And so the cell phone was charging. The police came in. I grabbed it and I was like, you ain't getting it, and smashed it, made the cops run it. I go to lockdown. So I'm in lockdown for possession of a cell phone. It's in November 2007. Again, cell phones were hard back then to have. There wasn't even smartphones out back then.
How much were they going for back then?
Like $350. Now we're talking 2007.
Cheap.
Well, they were, before I got out of prison, they were the 1200 and all that nonsense. Smartphone. We're talking flip phones.
Yeah.
People were able to suitcase a flip phone.
I saw the little baby ones they got too.
So it's easier whenever, and back then they didn't have polls in visitation. So people were suitcasing phones all the time.
And suitcases means to shove it up your ass.
Yeah.
Okay. For those that don't know what a suitcase is.
Right.
Okay. So they get you with this phone. What happens?
So they get me with the phone. I'm in lockdown. I come up with this genius plan that I'm going to kill myself. I'm just tired of life. Life's fucked up. I'm constantly going to lockdown. It's horrible. I'm young. I still don't know any better. Like that, when I'm telling you about hustling's way later on in my prison term. At this time, I'm just small hustling, making $5, being able to survive because my parents are on drugs still and they don't have any contact with me. And I ended up going to lockdown and I wanted to die. So I tried to hang myself like the chump that I was, and I couldn't do it. So then I tried to tie a sheet around my neck like 8 times, hoping that I would black out before I untied the 8 knots. Couldn't do it. So then I said, well, I'm going to make the cops kill me. And I remember they were serving chow, and I told the guy at the door, I was like, hey, bro, don't lock that door. And he's like, man, what you talking about? I'm like, bro, don't lock the doors. So whenever the trays leave, and I berated the police until the point that they threatened to come in my cell and jump me or whoop me or whatever they were going to do. And it was shower time. And when they came to my cell, they didn't cuff me up. They knew what they were going to do, but I had a different plan already. So as soon as they popped the cell, I shot past them. I made it out the front door. I'm in 24-hour lockdown at this time. It's at pill call. I make it out that door. I lock the door behind me. I go out. I make it down the breezeway out the front door because they're at pill call. Get onto the roof. And I'm in the education department, climb up on the roof, and I'm laying on the roof and my heart's beating. And they're calling emergency shutdown. So they're like, code whatever the hell the code was. And they're shutting down the prison. And I'm laying there and I'm like, oh my God, what do I do? And then I started crawling on this tin roof. And when I started crawling on the tin roof, I heard the cop below me, roof. He's on the roof. And I just get up, doof. And I just take off. And it's like a U shape. South Bay was a U shape. White shirt's like, get off the roof. And I'm like, fuck you, tonight's the night. tonight's the night. You're gonna have to shoot me off the fence tonight. And I ended up going around to the other side. I jumped off that onto the rec yard. I jumped the first fence, got cut up in the razor wire. I'm bleeding everywhere. I get over that fence and I start to climb the next one. Razor wire hits me. I'm stuck right there. Can't do anything. They got the guns on me. They're like, if you jump the fence, we will shoot. And I was like, shoot me, motherfucker. Facts, bro. Bleeding everywhere, bro.
And how many years into your sentence were you?
November 17, 2007. So I'm like 3 years into it.
So out of all the shit you pulled in prison, you never got extra time?
I got an outside escape charge.
But did they add that additional to the 15 or it just got...
I beat it in outside court. So I end up getting down bloody. They put stitches in me. They put me in a psych unit. I'm butt naked. They got an officer directly in front of the door because I escaped out of 24-hour lockdown. They have no clue. The cops lied how I got out the cell. So they put an officer right there. I'm in the turtle suit, just looking at them all night. The next morning they said, cuff up, you're going to medical. They put 2 shackles on me. And when I went up there, Palm Beach County Sheriff's was right there, 3 deputies. Three cop cars, sirens on all the way to Palm Beach County Jail. They booked me.
Did you stay in the county jail there while you were fighting the case?
Yeah, they kept me in. I was a 2-deputy escort. I stayed there for like 3 months. They brought me back to the prison. They sent me to Santa Rosa, which is a CM, close management prison. I go up there and then my lawyer calls and said they're offering 5 years. And I was like, I'm going to trial. So they brought me back down to Palm Beach County Jail, and I took it all the way to the door because there's a technicality where you can beat an escape charge if you're running for your life. You can't beat escape, but you're running in fear of your life. And because they opened up my cell door without me being in cuffs, and their intentions were to hurt me, so I was running from my life. And that was our defense. 2 officers got fired. They lied on how I got out the cell. A sergeant got demoted. Not trying to make any enemies. It was all a bad situation, man.
I can't imagine all the shit you got into, Ouellette.
Yeah, I mean, it's too much. I mean, we could talk about good things.
Do you have a podcast now?
No.
You should start one. you got the energy, you know?
Right.
Or at least a YouTube channel.
Right.
I'm surprised you don't have one.
Well, I mean, I need to.
Yeah, I think you should get on that for sure, man.
It's a part of the story.
Yeah, and share all these things. Now, you spread a lot of positivity on your platform now. Did you develop that in prison? When did that mentality change, or did this come after prison?
No, so I was in prison, and one of the things that we talk about is create a habit of asking yourself questions. So one of the great things that could come from me talking about that nonsense, right, is the fact that I was gone. So I didn't know how to be productive. I was unstable, manic, so to speak, and I was a bad kid. I was in lockdown and with nobody around me. I had been in lockdown like 2 years, and I was tired of crying. I was tired of being sad. I was tired of being unhappy. And I started asking myself questions like, you know, why are you like this? Why don't you change? You know, and I answered them truthfully. In answering the questions truthfully by myself, I inadvertently created a vision. And by creating a vision that I never knew existed, it gave me a direction to walk towards. So that is why I focus so much right now with our platform, with our organization, to create a vision. I became the best version of myself during the darkest days of my life. I discovered that person. I know that was the beginning of I will rise and you will too, the mindset.
So yeah, that's your slogan now. That's what you go by.
Yeah, I will rise and you will too.
Where does that come from? Like how did you put those words together to develop this?
So when I was going through these super tough times and I wanted to change and I would find myself scared, I would read about people that endured way more, slaves, people that were born into war, and they were just so courageous whether they wanted to be or not. And I would read about how people would go to like a monastery and stay there willingly, and it kind of just put me in an empowering position. And I will rise was my initial phrase. Like, that's what I said. I will rise. I will rise evolved into I will rise and you will too, because I learned that your best life is not lived until you're helping other people.
What I see a lot from the people I interview is that they have like one defining moment when they're serving a lengthy prison sentence, because some people don't learn it till after. One moment that defines them when they're like, I don't want to do this anymore and I need to focus on creating a new life, or it's like, I want to put this behind me. Was there a moment for you? Or did it just come over time?
I stumbled into it with creating a vision. So my moment was I was at the bottom and I started asking myself those questions, and I inadvertently created that vision, which gave me a new path that I never discovered. So as I started, I said, I don't want to get in trouble anymore. So I said, well, how do I do that? Well, I don't sell drugs, or I don't do this. So then it put me on a different trajectory. And then I would take a few steps and I would see positive results. I would visit my family. I seen my grandfather. And then I reinforced that with new steps in that same direction. So now I had a moral compass. I inadvertently created this new version of myself without even knowing it.
But what do you think triggered those questions?
I was tired. I was sad. I didn't want to be that anymore. And so I just said, why am I like this? And I went through a pity party. I went through pain. I went through years in 24-hour lockdown to get to this point of self-discovery that because again, I didn't hang with people that weren't getting in trouble. So I didn't know that there was a life outside of it. I stumbled up onto this and I just liked it. And when I liked it, I started to change. And when I started to change, it started to motivate me that I know that there's other people like me. I know there's people with potential, but they haven't tapped into it. They don't know that it exists. So I wanted them to be like, I want people to know you can become anything that you want to become.
What was your plan when you got out of prison after 15 years?
Man, I'm going to tell you. So I was pretty focused. I wrote a book in prison titled Understanding is Everything, a Practical Guide to Self-Betterment. I used that same energy that was hustling, that was escaping, that was destructive, and I put it towards being productive. I learned languages. I wrote a book. I felt like, I wanted to become one of my, like, what do you want to be, Ouellette? I want to be the best person I could be. I want to be the best podcast host. I want to be the best son. I want to be the best friend. And when you start to have that, it puts you in a different mind frame, and it motivates you. So I remember my sister coming to visit me, and she said, well, how much money do you think you need to make when you get out? And I said, well, I need to make like $75,000 a year. And she has a master's degree. She's like, I don't even make that. How are you going to make that? And I was like, I don't know. Why wouldn't I be able to make it? So I get out of prison. I don't go live with my family. I found a girlfriend on a cell phone, and I have this girlfriend, and I move into her house. I go from I don't transition because I got an escape. So that escape charge put me in maximum security all the way to the door. All the way to the door. Literally was in a riot 2 months before getting out of prison after doing all this time. But what am I gonna do? We refuse to go eat. So everybody's like, we ain't going to eat. I'm like, oh shit. I guess I'm not eating either, because what are you gonna say? Well, no, I'm going to eat. No, you ain't. So I'm in maximum security. So I transitioned from maximum security to move into my girlfriend and be a stepdad like this, and been in prison my whole life. It was a crazy thing, man. But so in prison, this is the power of having a vision. In prison, I told my sister, I want to make this money. This is who I want to be. I have a picture of me 2 weeks out of prison. I'm in slacks, long sleeve shirt. I created this person in prison. So I was ready for the world, but I didn't know how I was going to do it. I wanted to, I wanted to create a movie when I was in prison. I said, well, I'm going to document stuff with a cell phone, and I'm gonna send it home. I'm gonna make a movie when I get out. I got a bunch of footage of me in prison right after a fight, holding a knife. I got pictures all over my TikToks of bagging up dope. I got a bunch of footage fresh out of a shakedown, saying ignorant stuff like, boy, they ain't get this phone.
You need the YouTube, my friend. You need the YouTube.
So I wanted that so that I could show that I changed. So that was my goal, and I'm gonna push my book. I had this grand vision. Ironically enough, my life evolved into something like this because I wrote the book of self-help in prison. So I was like, the videos are gonna capture their attention, and then I'm gonna sell them the book of how you can change. And that was my whole strategy. It didn't quite work out like that. Whenever I got out of prison, I ended up working at Applebee's for $2 an hour. I couldn't get a job. I was pissed because I thought I was gonna kill it. I was like, I'm gonna go in there. I know what you need from me as an employee. I hit them with all the good things. I was like, I know what you need. I'm a good employee. I'm gonna be responsible. They're like, you're hired. Go take this drug test and this background check. Boom, I go take it. I don't do drugs. So boom, I get a rejection letter. Nothing.
From Applebee's or just
from all over. So I ended up going to Applebee's and saying I'd never been in trouble before. And I started working at Applebee's. I have a post where it said, I have bigger dreams, but bills call. Hi, my name is Alan and welcome to Applebee's. That was my middle name. So
why do you think that didn't set you back? Because you mentioned earlier that in your childhood, you felt like there was nothing better on the other side for you. There was no future in that sense. So in this moment, when you're out of a 15-year sentence and they're telling you no, and you can't be anything more than this, how did you overcome that instance, not letting it derail you to going back to your old ways?
A vision. So a vision is vital. If anybody's listening, a vision. You're talking about somebody that can empower themselves, create a vision. If you know what's possible in that vision, and if you need to look at other people who have made it, that should be all the motivation you need. So I created a vision. I ended up getting that job, and I ended up going and working like little side jobs. I posted on Facebook that I'll mow your grass, I'll pet your dog, I'll do whatever for money. And I ended up getting jobs immediately, $12, $13 an hour, $15 an hour. And my family was like, oh, you're doing amazing. You're doing so great. And I was like, I rebuke you. I am not doing great. Do not limit me to this. And they were like, you're not being realistic. And you know what? If I would have not had a vision to make $75,000 a year, when I did make enough money to pay my bills, I would have stopped there, just like so many other people stop, because that's the parameters. That the one great thing that came out of not being in prison, being in prison, is that I wasn't subjected to what the standard was out here. A lot of people are struggling, especially in the poverty area. So when a person's able to make $20 an hour, they're like, oh, you're doing good. You're an ex-convict. You're doing $20 an hour. You're surviving. But I didn't have that input. So I was like, man, I'm trying to make 75. I ended up making $82,000 my first year, plus my little side jobs that I did.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you don't work at Applebee's anymore. So tell people what you do now and why you're at the conference this week, too.
So that mindset that I cultivated in prison, I will rise and you will too. I started telling people, and when I started sharing it, when I was working in sales, and I was like, you can do it too. And they're like, how are you doing it? So I started sharing it with them. And what ended up happening was I realized that so many people are hurting out here. So many people are struggling. People coming out of prison, people overcoming addiction, people going through a divorce. They lost their identity. They're trying to regain focus of life. And when I seen that, I said, I'm gonna document my journey about rising and helping others. So I cut on my phone and I said, I'm gonna show you every single day in real time, pandemic, what it's like to navigate life and become everything you want to be, because I had it in my mind. So I started doing this, and TikTok started doing pretty good. And, back then prison TikTokers weren't so popular. So I started gaining followers. And after about a year, I traveled the country. I wanted to go explore freedom, like real freedom. So I lowered my cost of living. I bought a school bus. I traveled from Florida to California to New York. I got little sponsorships, 5-star places. It was amazing. I was living a dream, but people started to get like, you ain't doing nothing. You're just living off of TikTok. So the problem was they weren't applying the information I was giving them. Mm-hmm. So I said, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna structure it. And then I'm gonna present it to you that way that maybe you receive it better. So for the last year, I wrote a workbook unlocking your greatest potential. I created 4 fundamentals that the mindset that was cultivated, that was forged in the fire. I wrote 4 fundamentals. I went and got doctors, professors, therapists to put, therapeutic, clinical measures to it and back it up and say, hey, what do I need to change? So then we wrote the workbook, we expounded on the fundamentals, and we published it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so now we have a workbook, we have a teacher's manual, and we are about to release it to the world.
And people could buy that on like Amazon and
yeah, we're going to run a course. We just haven't, it's already published, it's already in print, but we haven't released it to the world because we don't want to release it we don't want to compromise the integrity of what it can do. It can change anybody. I know it can because I'm sitting here. Those stories, those are, I don't like that the podcast is about that because the power is in the change, but we highlighted that because that's who I was. And I'm no longer that person. I've been out of prison 5 years, accomplished every dream, paid for my parents to go on their dream vacations, bought my mom a car. I traveled the country 5 times. Mm-hmm. I'm 800 credit score. You know what I'm saying? I'm doing good.
Hallelujah.
Amen. That's a blessing. A lot of people don't make it. It was less than a 10% chance. So I know the power that it can bring, and we're about to release it. We're probably 3 months away. Probably by the time this podcast hits, it'll be available. You can go check out our website at iwillriseandyouwill.org. We have a 13-person team. Absolutely amazing. I am not the leader. I am just an advocate of the mindset. Claude Ouellette is a motivational speaker because I scream from the tops because I want people to know what their true potential is. I say all the time that I Will Rise and You Will Too is dedicated to helping people discover the best version of themselves and build the bridges to get there. And I want them to know what the best version of themselves is because I only did what I knew.
That's awesome. Well, Ouellette, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I'm glad we got the opportunity to do this. And I wish you the best, man. I'm so happy for your success and what you're building and your energy. I knew from the day I met you, you had great energy. And awesome. That goes a long way in this business.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.